discussion on karma. I think we're okay with karma now. So if you want to know more details, well, as long as this book goes into wonderful details about the characteristics and maybe having talked about what we talked about today, we have more of a foundation, and then reading it by ourselves is easier to understand. But it's helpful. And I mean, in the end, if karma doesn't exist and we act as if it did, no problem. It's okay. We feel happier. And it's all about feeling more satisfied and more content. Okay. But then there's the idea of refuge. Now, I know this is not popular, but for some years I used to just drop the topics that I thought were not so popular and just go along with the ones that are more popular. And I'm thinking, no, that's not okay. I want to talk about what's called refuge. Okay? Taking refuge. What does that actually mean? Because it's misunderstood. So the next topic after karma that is introduced in this book is to take refuge in something. Do we take refuge in things? Oh yeah, all the time. All the time. We take refuge in things all the time. Do we take refuge in things that can help us? Yeah, sometimes, right? I mean, sometimes you take refuge in a piece of chocolate. Right? That's a taking refuge. You feel really crappy and you had a crappy day and you just have a whole bar. And you feel better. Okay, nothing wrong. You may put on a few grams or whatever, but never mind. So we take refuge in other people if we feel really not good sometimes. So we talk. Pardon?
Pills.
Pills, yeah, medicine. Ooh, that can be a little dangerous because really pills don't have side effects; they have direct effects. So, and I don't know how good they always are, depending on the pill. But the point is that we take refuge all the time. Right? We entrust ourselves in another person when we don't feel well. We may call a good friend, we may call our parents, we may call, a good companion, acquaintance, and talking to them makes us feel better. When we get sick, we take refuge in the doctor. We take refuge in certain medicines, which hopefully help us. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Anyway, so in Buddhism, the same idea exists. In Judaism, you take refuge in God. You take refuge in the rabbi. So there's nothing wrong with that. Buddhism doesn't have no problem with that. But Buddhism also offers a further refuge. In particular, a refuge that is said to be beneficial, relying on this refuge, said to be beneficial in order to be reborn in a positive state, or to be totally liberated from the state we're in, or even better, become awakened like a Buddha. There are usually 3 goals. 3 reasons why one practices Buddhism. Maybe nowadays we add a 4th reason. To be happy right now. Okay? That's of course also important, and it can be added to feel, if we don't feel their future lives, practicing Buddhism, well, it makes us happy in this lifetime. We feel more content, we feel more, relaxed, we're friendlier, we're more mindful. All this is wonderful. And if there are future lives, well, at least we've taken care of it. Because those two are not contradictory. If we create the causes to be really happy in this lifetime in a constructive way, by being more compassionate, kinder, more altruistic and generous, etc., we're actually also creating the causes for the future. Like I said, there's a win-win situation to live as if there were a future life. So with this life's happiness in mind, but refraining from negativities, that's important, because thinking I rob a bank, I may get rich, well, that may be true, but it's not a cause of happiness really. It's just a karma of generosity is triggered by robbing a bank. Erroneously, that can happen. And if the karma of generosity is not triggered, well, then you don't make it and you go to prison instead. So this is the idea with karma. This is where sometimes the injustice, where the sense of like there's no justice with karma. Because, you can be a horrible person and make a lot of money and get richer and richer and richer and have, lots of people who support you. We see it all the time. But we see the causes and the effects too narrow. We expect a cause to right away give rise to an effect. That's a bit like we put a seed in the ground and we expect a tree to be there right away. It doesn't happen. Sometimes it takes lifetimes. Even a tree may only grow after many, 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 decades. So the same is true for karma. And when we see another person experiencing happiness or experiencing, let's say, money, having a lot of money because they stole it from other people, from a Buddhist point of view, having the money is not the result of stealing, it is just a ripening of a karma of generosity. So just by seeing the result, we cannot say, oh, just because it appears to be the result of stealing, that getting money is the result of stealing. We sometimes look at the result and misinterpret the cause for that. Okay? Anyway, we do that a lot. But going back to refuge, so the idea is that in order to well, be happy in this lifetime, but also possibly, if we believe in future lifetimes, well, then to have equally positive experiences we have in this lifetime, equal opportunities, and maybe even better, so that we're able to continue to transform our mind, to continue being of benefit to ourselves and others. But maybe even becoming liberated from the state we're in, and even greater, becoming a Buddha. So in order to do that, we need to do it ourselves. But we need help. And we can get help. Like in the end, if we were sick, we have to take the medicine. We have to experience the symptoms of the disease, and we have to go through the treatment. It's not like I can get my neighbor to take the medicine for me and do the exercising for me and eat good food and then hope to get better. That doesn't work. So we ourselves, when we're sick, when we want to have a nice body, a healthy body, we have to do the work. No one can do it for us, right? Okay. And it takes time, and we need help. Okay? There's nothing shameful about asking for help. We ask for help all the time. We ask a dietitian, we ask a doctor, and so forth. So we need help, we need medicine, we need to know what to do, but in the end we have to do it ourselves. I guess we can all agree on that. So likewise, for getting a higher rebirth, for getting liberated or becoming awakened, we need help. Where do we get help from? From those who've done it. Makes sense, right? If you want to travel to a country, you ask those people who've been there what advice they can give you. So likewise, practice, Dharma practice, is described similar to a journey. You go somewhere where you're not right now, and you don't really know what to expect, but you want to go. You see the purpose in going there. So this is why the types of mind that take you to those states are called path, or like roads or path, right? And there's the place you want to go to is that destination. And you have guides, you have guides who show you how to walk, what to be careful of. And those are called objects of refuge. So there are three objects of refuge. One is the Buddha, one is the Dharma, and one is the Sangha. So the Buddha is someone who's gone all the way. So he's a good refuge. He's a good guide. Yeah, he's a good guide. He's someone whose teachings I can rely upon. It's not like the Buddha can take our suffering. I mean, if that was possible, wonderful. We could just lay back, take a bunch of movies, have a good time, and wait until but it's not going to happen. But the Buddhas can show us at least. They're like a path, like a guide on the path. All right. Now, so then there's the Dharma. Dharma in the strictest sense, never mind, we don't need to introduce that. But Dharma also, there's another way of looking at Dharma. It refers to the qualities of a Buddha. But basically, Dharma also means the teachings. So in the stricter sense, I said I wasn't going to talk about it, but it's really the qualities of someone who is almost there or is closer, getting closer to the state of being awakened or to the state of being liberated. So those are the qualities we also may take refuge in. We may, and I'd say what taking refuge actually means, but we entrust ourselves in, we aspire towards. Okay? And then there's the Sangha, which means those who assist or those who also practice, who are on the way to becoming a Buddha, to becoming liberated. Those are the three types of objects. These are the objects of refuge. So it's just like, what does it mean to entrust yourself? It's not some kind of blind devotion, oh, I bow down to you, or, some kind of weird worship. That's not what it's about. It's about taking them as inspiration, as listening to their instructions, being inspired. So this is called causal. objects of refuge, causal objects of refuge. So you basically, when you have the Dharma, if it refers to the teachings, of course, it's not a person, it's not someone you entrust yourself in, but you try to understand the teachings and try to implement them. That's how you take refuge in the Dharma. Taking refuge in the Buddha and in the Sangha, so the Buddha as in like the person who's actually gotten all the way to the top and knows how to get there, and the Sangha, those who are on the way. Or maybe even those who practice also. There's different ways of explaining Sangha. Sangha can mean people who are on the way to become enlightened and they're highly advanced, but it can also mean anyone who practices. So, people who also practice, who encounter similar problems as ourselves, we can call those Sangha, we can call monks and nuns Sangha. There are different ways of looking at it. It depends. And you can take refuge in whichever of those. Yeah? Refuge in the sense and in trusting, asking them for advice, etc. So, that's the causal kind of refuge, because it's something that causal in the sense it's something other than yourself, and you just rely on this, you trust in them and aspire, be inspired and so forth. And then there's something called resultant refuge, which is your own future Buddha, your own future Sangha, your own future qualities. You take refuge in them, right? It's like, one day I'll be like that. So how do you take refuge? Here it kind of means you aspire. You want to become like that. It's also a type of taking refuge. So it's a bit like when you're not a doctor, but you want to become a doctor, you kind of aspire towards this doctor. You imagine sometimes, what is it like if I'm a doctor? So that would be like taking refuge in your future doctor. Right? It's kind of a different way of using the word taking refuge, maybe a little unusual, but this is how it's explained in the scriptures, taking refuge. Now, what are the causes of taking refuge? The two causes. One cause is the dislike. Sometimes it's called fear, but maybe also like a fear, a healthy kind of fear, a fear based on reasoning. Fear for our limitations, fear of our limitations, fear of our suffering. But not, as I said, fear in a negative way. It's just a concern or a dislike in a way. Like not a kind of paralyzing fear. Does that make sense? So it's just a fear based on reasoning, right? A kind of, no, I don't want this. I don't want to, I don't want to suffer and I want to overcome. So that kind of concern, that's one cause. And the other cause is a belief that the three objects of refuge can help us, right? So it's a bit like when you take refuge in a doctor, similar idea. So there's the fear or the concern with the disease, the dislike of the disease, not wanting to get sick, understanding that the longer I have the disease, the worse it probably is going to get, so I better should do something, right? Should find a remedy. So that's one cause, the concern of the disease, or being concerned or worried about the disease, based on reasoning, rational, okay, if I make it stay longer, if I don't do something, it'll grow chronic, etc. And the belief that the doctor and the medicine and the nurses, they can help me. Same idea. So this is what we do. Taking refuge is just kind of mentally connect with, our future states, Buddha Dharma Sangha, may I become like that? Or even the ones, the Buddha Dharma Sangha that are around, kind of entrusting ourselves, getting our mind, in the moment you think, I'm taking refuge, you remind yourself, you go in that direction, you kind of enter the gate of the Dharma, you move closer. Okay, I want to be cured, I want to remove my restrictions, my negative emotions, my harmful intentions, I want to remove them. Who can help me to bring this about? Well, the Buddha, who's taught how to do it, so I rely on the teachings, the Dharma, and then with the help of other people who are also practicing like myself, who've already advanced to a higher state, or maybe are just like myself, I rely on them for their assistance and their help. So that means taking refuge in Buddha Dharma Sangha. That's it. So people don't like that topic. I still don't get it. It's beautiful. Luciana.
Because I think it's maybe some people that think about Buddhism as a religion, maybe when we talk about refuge, it seems like something too religious for those that...
Well, you still take refuge in God. What's the problem? Right? I mean, it gets a little contradictory at some point, But actually, people think, and I've investigated this a little bit, can you still take refuge in your own? In order to become enlightened, you need to rely on a guide that shows you enlightenment. Now, if a different object of refuge takes you there, well then, in order to become enlightened, for that purpose, you can follow that. But there is no one else really. I mean, there's no other religion that speaks about it. It just depends what you want. It just depends what you want. So you can take, in order to become enlightened, well, it's really the Buddha who points in that direction. And then whoever points in that direction, we call a Buddha. We're not talking about just one Buddha. Lots of Buddhas around. So actually, from a Buddhist point of view, many of the enlightened being, awakened being, we call them Buddhas. It's just another word for being awakened. So actually, there's no problem that in other traditions, you have awakened beings. Right? If you talk about like certain rabbis or certain prophets, looking at what they do they take a person closer to awakening? Well, then they're an awakened person, possibly a Buddha, maybe on the way there. So really, it's like when we say Buddha, it doesn't mean, that's just a word describing a person having freed him or herself from all limitations. Why should they have to be teaching Buddhism? Right? They could teach other methods that slowly take you there closer. So we need to see the whole picture. And we can limit our way in which we can take refuge. Right? If we don't want liberation and enlightenment, okay. But in trusting yourself, it's not like you have to now make a commitment or such. Okay? You can, but you don't have to. You do it as far as you feel comfortable. But I think it's important to hear about it and give the option. Okay? And the thing is, like, being a Buddhist, it's almost like, it's just a word. What you are is what you are. What you call it is a totally different matter. But I still think, if you have concern with suffering, you're worried about suffering, you see some solution to your problems in Buddhism, well then you rely on the Buddha, you remember the Buddha, you're inspired, you rely on the teachings, and possibly then you're already taking refuge automatically. So you're already doing it, but you still feel worried about doing it. It's a bit like you're just entrusting yourself. But you can do it in certain situations more consciously. You know, when there's worry in your life, there's things are not going right, you just think, I entrust myself in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. It has the power to relieve the fear. Yeah? It has a power. And don't just think Buddha as in like an Indian guy, you know, with a, I don't know, Indian nose and Indian ball. I mean, it's just an awakened being, and we find awakened beings can be anywhere. For all I know, you could all be awakened. Just being here for me to help me to, you know, get closer to Buddhahood. So again, this black and white kind of like, oh, Buddha must look like that, kind of, you know, begging bowl, and that's just a symbolism for a Buddha. A Buddha is someone awakened. Yeah. So to take refuge in someone who is awakened, taking refuge in the guidance they provide us, and taking refuge in those who assist. That's it. Yeah. And like I said, faith. Having faith. So faith is a cause of that, but I talked about 3 types of faith yesterday, and I'll repeat those 3 types. They're beautiful. There's nothing scary about them. The first one is just believe. You know, believing in something. That's a kind of faith. And faith, the belief should be based on reasoning, not blind faith. Faith based on reasoning. So we have faith in certain people. We trust them because we believe they're trustworthy. So there's a level of belief we may have in the Buddha, or in particular the teachings, and then again, belief should only be temporary until we come to our own experience. So belief should be temporary. It's not always, at some point you let go of the faith because you have your own experience. So I believe the teachings benefit me, but don't be satisfied with that. Try to find out whether they really benefit you. So you have a certain experience with regard to maybe, let's say, a certain practice. Oh, now I know from my own experience that this helps me. So I don't need to believe it because I know. Okay? Once you know something for yourself, you don't need to believe it. And then you may have, believe that, I don't know, whatever else, that anger is bad for me. First, you don't know really, right? You believe it. Until you find out for yourself, oh yeah, it is really destructive. Eventually, it needs to all be transformed into knowing. But for the time being, you allow it to be faith, because we can't know it right away. Like I told you yesterday, I said, you know, so many things that scientists tell us, we believe them. We feel, oh, there's no reason, they have no reason to lie to us. The explanations they give make sense. So it is belief or faith based on reasoning. And we know we can do something about understanding it ourselves. So we may not make the effort, but we know it's possible, and maybe we make the effort to understand it firsthand, and then that belief has turned into understanding. Does that make sense? So there's a difference between belief and knowing. If you know, you don't say believe, right? Sometimes we mix those words up, but in actuality, if you know yourself, you don't say, I believe it's true. You don't say, I'm convinced it's true. You say, I know it's true. 100%. Okay, so temporary states, this kind of faith. But faith doesn't just mean you believe. Faith can also mean joyful faith. So there's the faith of belief, and then there's joyful faith. It's like when you're inspired. You know, when you meet someone who's so wonderful, and just their presence makes you happy. Have you had that experience? Maybe with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I mean, a lot of people have it with His Holiness. They may not even know this, but the moment they see His Holiness, sometimes people start crying. But they don't cry out of sadness. They feel this strong emotion that they've never had before, a feeling of happiness and something undescribable. And if we have feelings that we cannot describe, we sometimes just start crying. We get so confused. It's just a natural reaction, apparently, that there's a very strong emotion. Like sometimes we meet someone we haven't met for so long, and out of happiness we start crying. It's those kind of tears. When you meet His Holiness, some people, they start like crying because they're so happy. There's a sense of deep happiness by meeting Him. That I would call joyful faith, even though you're crying. Right? These are tears of joy, depending on what it is, or something really touches you, hard to describe. So that kind of faith is kind of like you're inspired. People are inspired. They suddenly know they can change. They know there's something greater. And that's so amazing. You meet someone who's, and you will not have it unless you meet him. You may have it by listening to teachings, but you have to have the experience yourself. I once met, I'll never forget that experience. I was already a few years into my studies. I'd already been in Dharamsala for more than 15 years. And I met this young boy from Germany. You know, he was like 18, dreadlocks, you know, the whole shebang, you know, totally dressed for India. The way I was dressed when I arrived, you know, the shiver shirt and the baggy trousers, you know, India uniform for hippies. I know, because I went there. I went through that. So anyway, I met him, and I don't know why he talked to me. He didn't know I was German. I didn't know he was, but we started talking, and from his accent, I could tell he was German. And he said, oh, can I talk to you? You know, I have a few questions, and I just arrived here. Can we have a cup of tea? So we had a cup of tea. He said, the weirdest thing happened to me. I don't know how to explain this, you know. I went to the temple the other day, and they said the Dalai Lama comes. And I said, oh, great, I heard so much about the Dalai Lama. I want to see him. It's part of my plan, you know. You want to go to see Taj Mahal, you want to do blah, blah, blah. There's a whole schedule you have, and part of the schedule is seeing the Dalai Lama. And he said, it was so weird. As he walked past me, I started crying. I don't know what happened to me. There was this deep feeling, and I don't even know how to describe it. It was kind of joy and sadness and everything together. It was amazing. What happened to me? What can I tell him, you know? He's like, wow, you met the Dalai Lama. Oh, big deal. You know, that's what happens. He's like, yeah, I never had something like that. I was so touched. And just as he walked past, and I told him what I could say in that moment. What can I say? I said, I think he's really special. He's, you know, he has really utilized his fullest potential, and we can all do as much as I could. And that was it. And we split. But I was, for me, why I'm telling you this was like, it was just this guy with dreadlocks. He didn't come, he wasn't like into Buddhism. I think he left the next day, and that was it. And he probably never really thought back. I don't know. But even, you know, someone who was not interested in Buddhism, and it didn't happen to me actually the first time. I was like not believing in past and future lives, and I don't even remember my audience with His Holiness. I certainly didn't see stars and had tears or anything. So some people are kind of have a thick skin. I'm like that, you know. Nothing happened to me. It happened later. Yeah. But there are plenty of people who right away, the first time, even before they meet His Holiness, they have dreams, right? They have dreams about His Holiness, etc. So what I'm saying, those kind of encounters, when you have these strong emotions, these we call joyful faith. And it doesn't have to be His Holiness. I'm sure you were in another situation when someone deeply inspired you, right? You met a person and you were like, wow, deeply inspired you. That's called joyful faith. Okay. And then there's faith of aspiration, where you yourself want to be like someone, where you yourself want to have a certain quality. So you have faith in a quality or in another person. So this is nothing scary. It's not about weird culty like of worship, cult, like, following someone, oh, you're wonderful, you're God, or something, like in these cults. I think we're a little bit scared of that, too. I mean, that fear of, like, worshipping someone. Like I said early on, we actually worship one person all the time. Oh, I said that yesterday. We're actually, even though we're not supposed to worship a person, we're not supposed to worship an ordinary person, we're very good at worshipping one person. We're slaves to our own self. I want this. Oh, I'm running right away to do it. Like I said yesterday, we're total slaves. We worship this I, and we're total slaves to this I. It's like we would never do what we do for ourselves for one person, even for a month. If you look after sick people, I mean, that's nothing. What we do for sick people is nothing what we do for the self. I mean, we dress the self. Every morning we get up, the self doesn't feel good. We have a shower. Then it feels hungry, we feed it. Then we spend a lot of money on creams and potions and what have you, And there's a little bit of an itch, we try everything to get rid of it. It gets sick, we wait for hours in the to get to the doctor. I mean, we're slaves to our own self. Okay? Like I said yesterday. So, therefore, we're very good at worshipping one person. So, it's not that scary after all. But yeah. So getting back to this kind of, it's not the kind of worship as such. Actually, worship has the connotation almost like you're doing it for that person. You're doing it for yourself. It's all for the self. So when the lamas, like I said, the prostrations, you're not doing prostrations for anyone else. Prostrations is mental. You're kind of like opening yourself up. It's really just when a prostration means like, I'm ready to receive. It's this kind of state of mind, I'm ready to receive something. And bowing down is just a physical expression of that, because in order to fill a vessel with fluid, if you hold the vessel higher, you won't get the fluid inside. You have to keep it lower. That's physics. It's gravity. I think if the law of gravity went the other way around, if in order to get fluid into a vessel, you would have to put the vessel higher, I think instead of bowing down, this would be an expression of worship, right? But since, due to the law of gravity, we're so used to, like opening yourself, it's like automatically, if you want to be humble, you want to, in the sense like you want to receive something, you lower yourself a little bit, right? And everyone does that in Israel. It's very funny. Like I've noticed people, like when they're with their parents or when they're with elder people, they're never like, I don't think so, there's a little bit of like, automatically we do that. It's not an automatic gesture. It's just expressions of openness. I want to receive. Yeah? And likewise, when we're full of ourselves, this is the expression of being full of ourselves and lowering ourselves. That's it. So that's expressed by prostrations. So prostrations is just you yourself. When you prostrate, you do it 3 times, because most of the time we're so distracted. So at least once we may actually pay attention. You do it 3 times, so that one time you're really thinking, I'm ready to receive. Please, so you're opening yourself up. That's it. It's nothing scary. It's just a psychological method. It's psychology. And you do it for yourself. You don't do it for the person. Like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he couldn't care less. You prostrate, you don't prostrate. Who cares? Yeah. But if you do it, if he does it, then for his own benefit, only to be able to receive. That's it. And the mental is the most important. If there's no mental attitude, it's just exercise. Exercise is still good, but right? Then you could do it 10 times, actually, it'd be better the more you repeat it. So I'm just trying to explain some of these things that look so weird from the outside and scary. They're not scary, they're just psychology, basic psychology, right? Okay. So these images here, it's not this is actually a Buddha. No one believes that. I mean, Buddha Shakyamuni didn't look like that. This man looks like a Tibetan, right? Not really like an Indian. But it's symbolic. It's supposed to remind us of someone special. Yeah? And so we take these images because we're very dominated. I mean, our sense, our eye consciousness is the most dominant.